Thank you very much, Ipileng, and to the delegates for engaging Ipileng and all other previous speakers. We managed to save time. I postponed my presentation earlier on because I was worried about time, and I thought if there was any presentation to be sacrificed, it had to be mine. So for that reason, because we have 23 minutes to lunch, I'm going to use the 23 minutes to give my quick presentation. But just to wrap up the whole morning, we had adopted 4 strategic objectives that are promoted by the African Development Bank. The first one is Feed Africa, and that's why we have Ipileng doing this presentation. And I think it was timers for her to be the last one before lunch, because then we will be feeding ourselves during lunch. The second objective is Power Africa, and that's why we had Ruan Foray speaking about powering Africa, especially even exploring renewable energy. And the third one is about manufacturing taking place in the continent. And we have spoken to even if you look at the Trans-Kalahari Corridor Secretary presentation, it talks about the automotive industry, but that also links to the integration of Africa, which is the 4th strategic objective. And obviously ICT is an enabler of integration, not only regionally, but even continentally. So let me give my quick presentation, and I know I'm standing between you and lunch, but fortunately our program allows me this 20 minutes to take you quickly through the presentation I was going to make. It talks to Agenda 23, it talks to the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, and it talks to how we can maximize opportunities that will be flowing from the implementation of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. The title is Deconstructing or Constructing the African Renaissance, the new Economic Partnership for Africa's Development Agenda 2063, the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, a case for Africa's brand re-engineering. I always preface my presentation with a quotation from Thomas Sankara, the first post-independence president of Burkina Faso, who said, I quote, "You cannot carry out fundamental change without a certain amount of madness. In this case, it comes from non-conformity, the courage to turn your back on the old formulas, the courage to invent the future. It took the madmen of yesterday for us to be able to act with extreme clarity today. I want to be one of those madmen. We must dare to invent the future." After the unbanning of the ANC and other national liberation movements in South Africa in 1990, there was a progressive newspaper called The New Nation that hosted the first National Literary Festival, bringing together all South African writers and writers from across the continent. One of the key keynote speakers was an Egyptian militant feminist writer called Nawal El-Sadawi. That's her photo behind Thomas Sankara's photo. And she said to us, creativity starts with disobedience. Now, basically, disobedient or madmen are the ones who bring about change. But unfortunately in Africa, because of political patronage, sometimes because of political repression, we have a situation where crazy people or madmen or disobedient citizens are discouraged from occupying the center stage. This is a global phenomenon, and I'm going to quote Steve Jobs, one of the founders of Apple, who said, and I quote, "Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They are not fond of rules. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. But the only thing you can't do is to ignore them, because they change things, they push human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius, because the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do." In 2018, the Harvard Business Review also paid a special homage to these crazy ones, and it referred to them as the rebel talent. These are innovators. And in fact, a few weeks ago when we were launching Mureza, I described the founders of the Mureza automotive car as the crazy ones, as the madmen, as the rebel talent, because up to so far, not many people in Africa have ever imagined Africans, and young Africans for that matter, manufacturing their own automotive brand. Immanuel Kant said, the best way to predict the future is to invent it. This goes back to what Thomas Sankara said, who said we need to invent our future. And indeed, Africa is in the process of inventing its future. And it's through trailblazers such as Mureza, these youngsters like Tulile Kanyile, Ipileng Kwadi, who are inventing Africa's future. And there are many other young inspirators out there that we can rely on, indeed, for us to be able to say Africa is in good hands. There are a number of epistemologies which has informed practice throughout our history as a continent. If you look at the writings of Cheikh Anta Diop in the volume, The UNESCO History of Africa, you look at Martin Bernal's Black Athena, you will realize that Africa has always been the cradle of civilization. But unfortunately, in 1885, at the Berlin Conference, which we have since dubbed the Scramble for Africa, European powers came together and decided to slice Africa into the 54 then countries that Africa came to be. And thanks to the African Union, we are now recognizing the 55th country in Africa, which is Western Sahara, which is presently fighting for its liberation from Morocco. Morocco is occupying Western Sahara, and the Polisario Front is leading the people of Western Sahara to attain their freedom. Then the 1885 Berlin Conference marked the beginning of colonialism in Africa. And in response to colonialism, in 1906, Pixley Kaisakaseme, who was a student at Cambridge University, gave a speech during his graduation, and this speech won an award as the best student speech ever given at Cambridge University. He titled his speech, The Regeneration of Africa. And basically he was saying Africa needs to come together and to resist colonialism. Then you fast forward to May 24th, 1963 in Ethiopia, when Emperor Haile Selassie had invited a number of post-independent presidents and heads of government, and also the leaders of the national liberation movements, especially from SADC, the ANC, SWAPO from Namibia, Frelimo from Mozambique, ZANU and ZAPU, parties from Zimbabwe. And he spoke about the unification of Africa. And the next morning, on the 25th of May, 1963, these leaders decided to establish the Organization of African Unity. But just before that, in South Africa in 1955, our people then said, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. This noted the beginning of non-racialism in South Africa. That's why in South Africa, we were saying our struggle is not necessarily black against white, but it is a struggle of all people against the demon of apartheid colonialism. Then fast forward to the post-apartheid South Africa in 1996, at the adoption of our democratic constitution. Thabo Mbeki, who was the deputy president to Nelson Mandela then, gave a very moving speech titled, I Am an African. 2 weeks later, at an event organized by the SABC, he coined a new phrase called the African Renaissance. And the African Renaissance as a conceptual framework took us back to Kwame Nkrumah's The Unification of Africa, and also to Pixley Kaisakaseme's Regeneration of Africa. And by the way, through his motivation, led to the formation of the African National Congress as the first national liberation movement in the continent. And that's why today we say it is the oldest national liberation movement in Africa. Then President Thabo Mbeki, with the support of President Olusegun Obasanjo and Abdelaziz Bouteflika of Algeria, came together and conceived what was then called NEPAD, New Economic Partnerships Development. Then rebranded the OAU, today's African Union. Now, we need to go back to our history. History tells us that, in fact, Africa as the cradle of civilization has always been very advanced, and perhaps that's why Pliny the out of always something refreshing new. And by then, I would say, perhaps he was paying tribute to our ancient kingdom. Mapungwe in the 11th century, which is at the border of Zimbabwe and Botswana. In fact, it is at the confluence where the Shashi River divides Botswana from Zimbabwe, and it flows into the river which divides South Africa from Zimbabwe. This ancient kingdom was then followed by, when it was dismantled, by Thulamela, which is now in the Limpopo Transfrontier Park. And that's why the northern region of Limpopo is now named Thulamela after this ancient kingdom. And those group of Mapungubwe citizens who didn't go to Thulamela proceeded further towards northeast, and they established the Great Zimbabwe in the Masvingo district. And when the Great Zimbabwe collapsed, they proceeded further to the west, and they relocated to Domboshaba in the northeastern part of Botswana. Domboshaba, loosely translated, means a trading hill. Now, if you look at all the artifacts that archaeologists have discovered, you will realize that, in fact, there was gold mining that took place as early as the 11th century in Thulamela. And they also started, okay, Rishka has just told me I'm left with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, okay. And they also started trading with the East. And that's why the first map of Africa was drawn by the Chinese. And in fact, after President Mbeki took over, he spoke to the Chinese who came to exhibit that map in the South African Parliament. So we've always traded with the East, and it is no wonder today that China is now our biggest trading partner. So for me, it is more like the full circle of life. I'll jump this one. Now, even though there were all these developments that were taking place in Africa, in fact, I must also say Egypt, as the cradle of civilization, has taught many scholars from Europe. In fact, Herodotus, who is considered to be the father of mathematics, came to study in Egypt. And the theorem of Pythagoras was developed in Egypt based on the mastery of the pyramids. So even though Europe came to study in Africa, they still considered us the dark continent, as Joseph Conrad proposed in his seminal work, The Heart of Darkness, in 1899. And Simon Anholt is considered to be one of the best competitive identity specialists. And he's saying that Germany is known for its engineering, France with chic, Japan with miniaturization, Italy with flair, Sweden with design, Britain with class. Africa is known for its famine, disease, and terror. I wouldn't conclude this without quoting President Donald Trump, who in 2018 said, African nations and Haiti were whole countries. And since then, the University of Southern California undertook a detailed study to look at the impact of these expletives about African nations and Haiti as uttered by President Donald Trump. And they realized that, in fact, it took Africa back by 100 years when Africa was considered to be the dark continent. The university found that since then, American movies, except for one or two productions, the media in general in the US stopped covering Africa positively. And where they were covering Africa, they still bought into the old stereotypes of Africa being a dark continent. Mark Shuttleworth went into the space as the first astronaut from Africa. And when the world was celebrating him, he said something that I found very profound. He said, once you are in the space and you look down to the earth, there's no reason why Africa should be at the bottom and the North should be at the top. And he said, it's highly possible that once you are up there, you may decide to invert the map and Africa becomes on top and today's North, as we're made to believe, come to the bottom. For me, this is a new perspective that we need to be adopting as Africans. We need to begin to look at ourselves as very superior civilization, the civilization that has given birth to the global civilization as we know it today. Socrates says the way to gain a reputation is to endeavor to be what you desire to appear. I've spoken about various epistemologies, and I've spoken about how these epistemologies are developed in Africa. And I said that deliberately to show you that, in fact, history is a deliberate act by humankind, as Karl Marx says in his iconic work, The German Ideology, that the founder of the ANC spoke about the regeneration of Africa. Then in 1963, Kwame Nkrumah spoke about the unification of Africa. That explains the reason why today the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement Secretariat is headquartered in Ghana. This is one way of paying tribute to Kwame Nkrumah. But I've spoken about Pixley Kaisaka Seme, I've spoken about former President Thabo Mbeki and the role they played in the rebranding of the African Union. Then when Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was the chairperson of the AU Commission, developed a philosophical framework and a strategic document which serves as the roadmap for Africa's development. And she called it Agenda 2063. It talks about development of peace and security and socio-economic development. It talks about the reintegration of Africa through the development of rail and road infrastructure, including ICT development. If you remember with NEPAD, Senegal, during the time of President Abdoulaye Wade, was nominated to project manage the establishment of ICT infrastructure. The ICT cable that connected Southern Africa with the East and also Southern Africa with the West. And then South Africa was mandated to project manage the establishment of the rail and road infrastructure from Cape Town to Algiers, even though later on the Algerian government decided to build the road infrastructure between Algeria and Egypt. So right now, the Development Bank of Southern Africa is project managing the development of rail and road infrastructure to interconnect Africa so that it could be possible for Africa to trade amongst herself. And that's why, even though the World Bank is saying the intra-African trade is sitting at 14%, the founders of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement prescripts have set a target of 50% trade being achieved in 2022. My guess could be that maybe 2023, because by then they didn't know that we will suffer the economic lockdowns as a strategy or tactic to contain the spread of COVID-19. This is Africa. I'm left with 1 minute. It goes back to what Tulile was talking about, that 4IR is very crucial for us to be able to promote our brands as Africans. And René Descartes says, cognito ergo sum, which means I think, therefore I am. If you think you are capable of inventing the future, indeed you will be able to invent this future. Thank you very much. Those are our contact details. Over to the chair, Rushka. I've stolen 3 minutes from Rushka's time. Okay.
Thank you to our host, Mr. Saul Molobi. It's nearly 25 to 2. We'll be breaking for lunch now, and we will meet again at 2 o'clock. Thank you. See you at 2.
See you later, colleagues. Thank you. I've noted comments from Fred and Dr. Nokwe. Thank you very much. Okay. See you at 2.
See you at 2. Will be our MC for the remainder of the afternoon. Thank you. Angela, over to you.
Okay, great. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name is Angela.